Hey everybody, I'm forewarned meteorologist Paul Hagen here in the Weather Center doing a video blog post today because, well, it's just a really complicated weather situation. It's easier to just do an 8 or 9 minute video and talk about all the different possibilities as we head through the week in terms of winter weather, rather than type out about a 1,500 or 2,000 word blog post. And this way I can give you a little more detailed explanation of what we're talking about and the odds of the various possibilities. Let's start by talking about the cold weather. This is the really easy part of the forecast. It's just cold outside. It was cold this morning. Temperatures just aren't going to warm up a whole lot as we head through the day. Around 20 degrees by noon, up into the mid-20s for highs this afternoon. A little bit chillier to the north and northeast, the usual pattern there, and then cooling right back down this evening. In fact, we'll start off on Tuesday morning with temperatures around 10 degrees, lots of spots in the single digits. Today's wind chill just isn't going to improve a whole lot. We started off with sub-zero wind chills even in Nashville, and at best this afternoon those wind chill numbers are going to improve, if you want to call it that, up into the mid-teens. So it is going to be cold today, it's going to be cold tonight, it's going to be cold tomorrow with high temperatures around freezing, and we're not going to climb above freezing until probably sometime on Wednesday morning. Temperature's actually going to climb from around 24 degrees, that low temperature Tuesday night. That's going to happen around midnight, and we'll actually be climbing up closer to freezing by early on Wednesday morning. But you see a couple things of note there. On Wednesday and Thursday and Friday, a couple chances of some snow, some ice, some rain, all mixed together. As usual, we find ourselves on the transition line in between snow to the north and just plain old rain to the south. So Wednesday is the first system. There's going to be another one on the heels of that Thursday night into Friday. I'm not going to get too much into detail on the Thursday night, Friday chances of snow until the tail end of this. Let's focus on the first one that's going to move in. That's going to be on Wednesday. I'm going to run down what we know and what we don't know at this point. So what we know is, as usual, we're going to be on the rain-snow line, and that tends to be where the icy accumulations happen. Snow is more likely the farther north you go within the mid-state, and rain is more likely the farther south you go, but exactly where that transition line is going to set up, well, it's one of the things we don't know. Road conditions likely to deteriorate Wednesday, whether it's due to snow on the roads or a little bit of icy accumulation, or whether it's due to just plain old wet roads. Those can cause plenty of problems, as we find out every time it rains. And we know that the forecast is going to change. We're still about 48 hours as I record this from all this starting, so we got a long way to go before this heads our way. What we don't know, the exact path of the storm system. That's why the forecast is going to change. The whole storm system that's causing this is still out in California this morning. So over the next 48 hours, it's going to swing in our direction. We're going to get better data on it now that it's over land. We can send some weather balloons up into this thing, and hopefully that gives the computer models some better stuff to work with in projecting where it's going to go. How much warm air is going to move in? What kind of transition do we see from snow to something else, be it sleet or freezing rain, or maybe just all snow? How fast does that warm air move in? Part of that has to do with the exact path of the storm system. So, with those things in question, the accumulation amounts of different types of precipitation are significantly up in the air, and those specific transition times are also up in the air. And with a nod to Donald Rumsfeld from about 13 years ago now, there are unknown unknowns, things that could change that we aren't really even thinking about yet at this point. The atmosphere loves to kind of throw us curveballs, so we need to be thinking about that. Quick refresher, since this is our first winter weather event of the season in terms of precipitation, here's how all this develops. So when the atmosphere is cold on the right-hand side of your screen, cold at cloud level, cold at ground level, precipitation starts as snow, falls as snow, lands as snow. Sleet happens when there's a thin little layer of warm air significantly higher off the ground. So the snow falls into that, it melts, but there's a thicker layer of cold air near the ground that it can freeze into sleet pellets before it hits the ground. Freezing rain is when there's a thicker layer of warm air a little closer to the ground. So the snow falls into that, it melts to rain, and then it falls into that freezing air near ground level, and then it freezes on contact. That's what produces those glaze accumulations. And then if it's just rain, that's when there's enough warm air above our heads that everything melts and stays as liquid precipitation before it hits the ground. So what are we going to see? Well, over the next couple of days, not a whole lot. A lot of sunshine in the forecast for the rest of today. Clear skies tonight, that's why it's going to be so cold. And just a gradual increase in cloud cover as we head through the day on Tuesday. But there's that storm system getting its act together out to our west. They're going to see some significant accumulations of snow up around St. Louis into Illinois. And already by about midnight, could be seeing some snow adding up at ground level in the western half of southern Kentucky. That first little arm of snow kind of swings through the northern half of the mid-state. This is the latest information that I'm getting as of just before 9 o'clock as I'm recording this, and you can see that the latest computer model runs do produce snow, and then that pink area is the transition from sleet to freezing rain, and then eventually all to cold rain farther to the west. Now, keep in mind, this is going to change with every successive model run exactly where that line is going to set up. But the farther north you go and into the higher terrain of eastern Middle Tennessee, it's where you're more likely to at least get some ice accumulations, if not snow. Farther south you go, it's looking like more rain. We'll be able to break it down to a greater degree on an hour-by-hour basis once we get closer to Wednesday itself. Just wanted to give you that overview of how the computers think this is going to shape up in terms of the precipitation pattern. How much? Well, that latest run of our in-house Futurecast model, the RPM, produces this map of snowfall. Notice that tight transition between hardly anything, a dusting, and then some decent snowfall amounts, possibly up to 4 inches in some of the higher terrain along the eastern Highland Rim particularly. But again, this is one version of one computer. I'm going to show a few of these to show how much disagreement there is amongst the various computers, but notice the pattern. That's the most important thing right now compared to the various amounts. You can get hung up on how much snow you're getting in your part of one county, but again, just a little wiggle in the storm track could change things significantly. Just look at Davidson County. If you go out towards Bellevue, southwestern Davidson County, the computer thinks a dusting, less than half an inch. You go farther north towards the northern tip of Davidson County, it's saying more than 2 inches of snow. If that changes just a little, then obviously the whole thing gets rearranged. Switching computer models, and we will take a look at, this is the North American model, and it keeps everything pushed up to the north. So same pattern, but just offset by about maybe 40 miles or so, which compared to the size of the atmosphere, which is the size of the planet, that's not a big wiggle in the storm track. That's why winter weather forecasting is so tricky. So again, keeping those higher amounts farther up to the north. Around here, given how reluctant the atmosphere is to snow, that's probably the most likely scenario. This is the American GFS model. This tends to be the least accurate one, which for snow lovers is, of course, the bad news, because this one is the most bullish on our snow potential for Wednesday. The European forecast model, which tends to be one of the more accurate long-range models, kind of lands in between, with not a whole lot of accumulation for Metro Nashville. But again, the pattern is the same. Higher snow amounts the farther north you go, and the farther south you go, you're going to see mostly cold rain. Now, if we get lower snow amounts, that means more ice potential, and the computers are adding up at least some potential for less than a quarter inch of ice accumulation. That's not great, but it could be worse. That's enough to cause slippery conditions on the roads, especially the bridges and overpasses, but it's not enough to add up to any great extent on power lines to cause significant issues there. Different forecast model, again, has it roughly in the same spot, just highlighting some slightly different areas there. Taking a quick look at some other information that we tend to use to forecast these types of things. This is a forecast sounding, and follow the arrow there. There's a little bend in the red line. This is from the North American model, and this one produces that little bubble of warm air, but it's very near ground level, so that tends to be a freezing rain type of forecast sounding. A different computer model produces that little bubble of warm air just a little bit farther off the ground. That's either a snow sounding or a sleet sounding, more likely sleet with a little pocket of warm air above ground level. The Ensemble forecast, adding up a bunch of different computer models and kind of adding up everything in between, shows about a 10% chance of freezing rain over the mid-state. The amounts really aren't that high, about 1/10 of an inch or so, but that still would be enough to make things slippery. In terms of the most likely potential for snow accumulation, again, that Ensemble forecast, taking all of the computer models and averaging them out, produces pretty minimal amounts for most of the mid-state, talking about less than an inch of snow for Middle Tennessee and around an inch of snow in southern Kentucky. Nothing to get too excited about if you are a snow enthusiast. The outlier models, the snowiest ones, still produce upwards of 3 inches of accumulation for the northern half of the mid-state. So there are a lot of different possibilities still on the board at this point. In terms of that system later in the week, Thursday night into Friday, well, one of the American models is producing significant snow amounts for southern Kentucky and northwestern Middle Tennessee, and a couple of inches for Metro Nashville as well, Thursday night into Friday. I don't think that's the most likely scenario at this point. I think this one tends to be a little too carried away with the amount of snow that we could possibly accumulate, but it's a possibility. So the things to keep in mind at this point: it's still more than 48 hours away. It's too early to panic. I didn't put the panicometer in this one, but we'll get to that over the next couple of days. Just be aware that road conditions are likely to be an issue on Wednesday, whether it's from snow, whether it's from ice in the form of freezing rain or sleet, or whether it's just from wet roads with that cold rain falling down. Conditions are going to deteriorate on Wednesday. There are going to be changes to the forecasts. We'll have blog updates keeping you updated with the latest information. We'll have our updates during the newscast as well, and social media. As new information comes in, if something of note changes or is confirmed, then we'll be sure to update you via all the ways that we can update you. So we'll keep you posted.